impressed with the ways of Kammaṭṭhāna monks for the first time. One of my older peers had gained a lot of experience being a monk for the past 3 years. That year, on his way to attend Venerable Ācariya Thoon funeral, he stopped by his home village and temporarily resided in Wat Ban Nong Wang. He was pleased to see me as we were old acquaintances. His name was Venerable Ācariya Thoon. He taught me about Dhamma practice, but I had insufficient time to practice with him because I was occupied with learning Dhamma scriptures, pariyatti. All I could do was wash his monk bowl every day. He never explained about the path and fruit of enlightenment, nibbāna, but he taught me putto as a meditative mantra, parikamma. I hadn't had a chance to use the mantra, but I couldn't help but admire and feel faith, sattha, in his way of being. He was calm and collected in his every word and action. Whether he was standing, walking, sitting, or reclining, he was wholly composed. When he ate from his monk bowl, he did so in a composed manner, and he only took 1 meal per day. After his meal, he would use his handcrafted wooden toothbrush to scrub his teeth clean. Even when it came to washing his hands, he washed them repeatedly until they were clean. Observant by nature, I noticed Venerable Ācariya Thoon's mannerisms, and my admiration and faith, sattha, in him grew. As I tossed out his trash, I picked out his used wooden toothbrush and I wondered, why do monks of the forest tradition, Kammaṭṭhāna, use these kinds of toothbrushes? They whittle down a piece of wood and delicately craft it so it can be used as a toothbrush. Kammaṭṭhāna monks must be very diligent. If a mere toothbrush is made this beautiful and refined, their Dhamma practice surely must be even more refined. I was determined that once I had completed my Dhamma studies, I would set out to practice mental cultivation, bhavana, with Venerable Ācariya Thoon. I always tried to observe Venerable Ācariya Thoon and see if he was deficient in any manner. Whenever he came from somewhere, went somewhere, or did anything, I observed him. When he went on his alms round, bintabata, I noticed that he walked in a perfectly composed manner. When he ate from his monk bowl, he did so in a composed manner. He taught me how to wash a monk bowl, how to wipe it dry, and how to put the bowl cover on. My admiration and faith in him continued to grow steadily. He also taught me how to wash my robe, how to hang it dry, and how to put it away. When he spoke with lay people, he used a gentle voice and was composed in his speech. One day, Venerable Ācariya Thoon told me to cut a stalk of bamboo into a few 9-inch pieces. He instructed me to slice them open and whittle them into a round shape. I couldn't tell what we were making. I asked him, Venerable Ācariya, what are you whittling this for? He told me, there is a purpose, just do it, you'll find out soon enough. While I whittled the bamboo, I thought, I wonder what this whittling is for. After I finished whittling down the bamboo stalks, I tied them into bunches and placed them in his room. The second day, I went to the outhouse, which was a deep hole in the ground. I spotted 1 whittled bamboo stalk on the ground next to a bucket. In the bucket, there were 2 whittled bamboo stalks, or cleaning sticks. I thought about how forest tradition monks are so meticulous that they take something beautiful like bamboo and whittle it down into a cleaning stick. As I sat there defecating, I reflected on the many other things about which forest tradition monks are meticulous. Right there in the outhouse was the first time in my life that the admirable ways of forest tradition monks were imprinted on me. I aspired and was determined to become one of them in this lifetime. At that time, I grew to be even more interested in practicing Dhamma with Venerable Ācariya Thoon. I always compared the ways of forest tradition monks with non-forest tradition monks. It was really too bad that Venerable Ācariya Thoon didn't teach me Dhamma for the path and fruit of enlightenment during that time. If he had taught me how to develop insight, vipassana, I surely would have known and seen the ultimate truth, satchadhamma. The most he taught me was putto, but never mentioned anything about vipassana development. Perhaps he didn't know for himself, or perhaps he knew but didn't want to talk about it. I was very interested in Dhamma practice during that time. The following day, Venerable Ācariya Thoon had me prepare a path for walking meditation, cankama, in the woods near the outhouse and told me, "I will teach you how to do cankama here tonight." Once I had accepted, I had to follow his orders. At 7 p.m., he told me that it was time, and we walked over together. The moon and stars shone perfectly brightly that night. He said, "Samanera Thoon, walk from the outhouse path, from here to over there, and turn back toward the right, like this." Then he demonstrated how to do it. Along the meditation path was a group of bamboo stalks. Many monks and samaneras who walked to the outhouse alone at night told of seeing a hungry ghost, beta, bending the bamboo stalks to block the path. The beta had long hair, large eyes, and a cavernous mouth. This was precisely my path of walking meditation. All Pra Ācariya Thoon told me was to concentrate on Phut Tho with every step I took. I was to take a step while thinking Phut, then another step while thinking Tho. I was to walk normally and not think of anything else. I was to focus only on the meditative mantra, parikama. Then it was time for me to be brave and decisive. Just the previous night, the beta had spooked a monk so badly he had shrieked in fright. Though I hadn't seen the beta before, I was afraid, thinking, if I really see the beta, I will not run away. If it comes down to life or death, I will fight him straight on. If the beta is going to eat me as I do cankama, then so be it. Then Pra Ācariya Thoon went to do walking meditation on his own path, and I started out on mine. I was so afraid that I could hardly take my first step, but I had to overcome the fear and keep walking while focusing on the meditative mantra. Each time I came upon the bamboo stalks, I would feel my legs weaken. After a while, however, I grew accustomed to it and was able to do walking meditation in a normal fashion. At first, because I was new at it, my strides and the meditative mantra were unsynchronized, but after some time, my strides and mantra fell into a harmonious rhythm. About 30 minutes into it, my legs became very sore. This was because I had never done walking meditation before. I didn't want to stop for fear of being reprimanded by Pra Ācariya Thoon for lacking forbearance. I had to get over it and continue walking. After an hour had passed, Pra Ācariya Thoon still hadn't stopped walking, which meant that I couldn't either. I was determined to persevere. At that moment, my mind had become steadfastly focused and I grew motivated. My fatigue disappeared. My mind was filled with a blissful sensation. As I was doing walking meditation, I experienced a moment of calm. I felt physically and mentally light. My mind was replete and awash with bliss. I felt like I would be able to continue walking like this all night. Around 9 p.m., Pra Ācariya Thoon told me to take a break and escorted me back to my monk hut, kuti. I didn't want to stop. I wanted to do walking meditation for the entire night. But since he brought me back to the kuti, I had to follow. After he went to bed, I couldn't sleep, so I got up and went to do more walking meditation at the temple's clearing all by myself. Near daybreak, I finally returned to my room to get some rest. That was how I learned to do walking meditation. But the techniques were those of tranquil meditation, samadhi, not insight, vipassana, in any way. The next day, Pra Ācariya Thoon had some business to attend to with Luang Por Thoon at Ban Champa. He invited me to go along, so I took leave of my parents and embarked on the journey with him. It was a journey filled with intense suffering. I don't remember what I was carrying with me, but I know that it was heavy. I carried my monk bowl and Pra Ācariya Thoon's umbrella tent, God. After 4 kilometers, my monk bowl felt like it was growing heavier. We hadn't taken any breaks. I was tired, the load was weighing down on me, and I was consumed with hunger. I was accustomed to 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch, but that day I had only had breakfast and was too excited to eat much. When I felt overcome with suffering, tears streamed down my face. I wanted to ask Pra Ācariya Thoon to stop for a break, but was too afraid. I had to keep on going. At the 6-kilometer mark, Pra Ācariya Thoon allowed us to stop for a short break. Then we headed out again. We reached Wat Pa Ban Champa around 4 p.m. When we arrived, the monks and samaneras were sweeping the temple grounds. 2 samaneras came to take our things and show us to the pavilion. I saw that all the monks and samaneras wore dark ochre-colored robes. I stood out as the only one in an orange-colored robe. The temple grounds were clean, orderly, and attractive. This made me more and more devoted to sattha and impressed with the ways of the Kammaṭṭhāna monks. All of the monks and samaneras were equally composed in deportment. They spoke in gentle, composed tones, only communicating what was necessary. I was innately observant by nature. At that time, I was so utterly exhausted that I just wanted to get some sleep because it was nearly dark. The samaneras put me up in a new kuti that I would have all to myself. It was a brand new kuti that hadn't been slept in yet. It was about 100 meters from the main hall in a dense forest of large trees. There was a small path leading to the new kuti. It had a bamboo floor and a straw roof. Inside, there were 2 bunches of ripe bananas hanging on a string. That night, I couldn't catch a wink of sleep because I was so hungry. My stomach grumbled and growled. I glanced at the ripe bananas and my hunger intensified. So I got up to grab the ripe bananas. As I was about to peel one, I thought, "Hey Thoon, you are a samanera and must uphold the 10 precepts, tassa sila. You have been good about keeping the precepts thus far. You cannot break the precepts now." After thinking this, I got back into bed and continued to stare at the ripe bananas. That night, I got up to eat the bananas a total of 3 more times. Each time, I felt shame and put them back down. Owing to hunger, I hardly got any sleep. That night, I fully experienced the suffering that comes from wanting. I woke up early and headed to the pavilion. When I glanced under the kuti, I noticed something strange. There was a long dirt mound covered with dried and wilting leaves. Upon closer inspection, I saw a tray and small cups with food in them, as well as flowers and incense sticking out of the mound. I didn't think much of it, assuming it was probably some auspicious tradition related to new kutis. I figured it was probably just a customary offering in deference to the house spirits presiding over the kutis. When I arrived at the main hall, I told a teacher, Ācariya, about it. He asked if I was afraid. I told him I wasn't. He told me, "A woman who had died while pregnant was buried under the kuti just 2 days ago. Her husband and relatives brought food for the ghost to eat." Upon hearing that, I began to feel afraid. But then I told myself, "Last night, how had you been able to sleep? In the following nights, you'll be able to sleep as well." I reassured myself that I had upheld my precepts and the ghost couldn't do anything to me. The person who had died and I who am alive are the same in being of the 4 elements, Jatu Thatu. When it was time to go on the alms round, Bindapata, the teacher helped me with my bowl and taught me, "When on Bindapata, you must remain composed. Do not look at the face of the person giving alms. Confine your eyesight to your bowl. When walking, look only at the feet of those walking in front of you. Guard your thoughts. Do not think about this or that. Just keep on walking after them." I went on alms rounds in that village for 10 days and never saw anyone's face. When it was time to eat, the teacher passed the food along and I scooped a good portion into my bowl. Once I finished my meal, I washed my bowl and put it away in my kuti. Then, like the other samaneras, I did walking meditation. The teacher asked me if I was still scared of ghosts. I told him that I was. He told me, "This entire temple was a cemetery. All the kutis are built over graves. The one that you are staying in was built over a pregnant woman who just recently died." As I listened, I couldn't help but be scared, but there was no escape. Though I was afraid, I had to swallow my fears and remain there. I thought of the other samaneras. They are small samaneras just like me. How can they stay here? If they can do it, so can I. Once I was determined to endure and fight, I was able to stay on as if everything was normal. After sweeping the temple courtyard one day, I walked over to the water pot to get a drink of water, but there wasn't a metal bowl anywhere. I only saw a bamboo flask with a spout on one end and a piece of cloth tied to the other. I had no clue what the contraption was. As I walked to the main hall to obtain a metal bowl, a samanera walked by and told me, "Do not use the metal bowl to scoop water. Instead, use the Dhammakaraka to scoop and filter the water. I didn't know how to use a Dhammakaraka to filter water. I noticed a couple of bamboo stalks with cloth tied on one end, hanging there. I grabbed one and examined it in wonderment. So this is a Dhammakaraka. I submerged the bamboo flask and pulled it back up, but all the water flowed out. I did this many times and the water flowed out every time. I was so thirsty. As I stood there trying to figure out how the Dhammakaraka worked, a younger Samanera walked by and asked, "Elder Samanera, what are you doing?" I asked, "How do you filter the water?" And he demonstrated that if I submerged the Dhammakaraka and covered its spout with my finger right before pulling it up, the water would remain in the pipe. This really got me thinking, because it was something that I was not accustomed to. Even the easy appeared to be difficult. During my stay there, I learned a great many things about the forest tradition, Kammaṭṭhāna. I sat and thought about the ways of the Kammaṭṭhāna monks. From the temple grounds, the path to the huts, the main hall, chamber pots, and various other things. Everything was clean, organized, and put away in its place. Even water was filtered for drinking. Other utensils, parikara, like kettles or cups, were all clean and sanitary. These all factored into my positive impression of the Kammaṭṭhāna monks from that moment on. Many days later, Pra Ācariya Som brought me back to Wat Nong Chan and then left to attend the funeral for Pra Ācariya Man as planned. At the time, I was in the process of simultaneously completing my primary and secondary level Buddhist studies. I had already completed my primary level Buddhist studies and could remember every verse and every grouping, and I could recite all of it from memory. Thereafter, I went to Mahasarakham to earn my advanced level Buddhist studies degree. After completing all 3 levels of studies, I was so confident in my comprehension and memory of all the material that I was willing to bet money on it. Many people challenged me, and I was able to answer every question. Back in those days, it was customary for 2 monks to sit on raised preacher seats, Dhammasana, and for one monk to ask a question and the other monk to answer. There was intense pressure to quickly answer questions about Dhamma topics. If one monk didn't have sufficient knowledge, he wouldn't be able to answer the other monk's questions. The questions centered on topics like the Buddha's history, the Buddha's cultivation of perfections of character, bārami, in his 10 final lifetimes as a bodhisattva, the 500 lifetimes in which the Buddha cultivated his bārami, the Buddha's history from the very beginning, Paṭṭhāma Sampoti, the world's very first era following the creation of the universe, Paṭṭhāmakappa, how humans arose in the world, Paṭṭhāmapanna, the past Buddhas who cultivated their bārami in the wisdom-based, paññātika, faith-based, satthatika, or diligence-based, vriyatika, focus, how each Buddha became enlightened, our Buddha's Buddha era, Patarakappa, the fire, water, and wind that will cleanse the world at the end of this era, and how the world was created. These topics and countless other topics were of great interest to me. I wanted to be a great preacher who could sit on either of the 2 seats, Dhammasana, with confidence. I was very committed to my studies, and eventually I did sit on both seats, Dhammasana, with complete confidence. I was not afraid of anyone. Soon afterward, my parents ordered me to return home. Every day, my old friends from the village would come out to play with me and tell me about worldly things. Initially, being around my friends had no effect on me. But the more they talked, the more I found myself slowly getting sucked back into the realm of worldly affairs. Eventually, I disrobed in order to work the fields and earn a living, as was customary for villagers during those times. I continued to practice chanting, and I would constantly review and reflect on the knowledge I had acquired. During auspicious annual events in the village, Mawlam Northeastern-style singers would be invited to perform. The singers would ask and respond to questions according to their relative knowledge. If someone couldn't answer, the villagers would boo them off of the stage. I loved events like this and would make it a point to attend, no matter how far I had to travel. I didn't care about girls. After I purchased food, I'd find somewhere to sit and listen. Sometimes I sat there listening to the performances until it started getting light out again. If the singers didn't stop, I didn't leave. The riddles were very educational, and because I had previously studied the material, the performances greatly captured my interest. But when the singers started singing about mundane love and romance, my ears shut off because there was no knowledge to be gained. I was very fixated on acquiring knowledge. I enjoyed reading ancient Dhamma books in calm script, like ancient texts from Vientiane, Laos. I often sought out ancient texts to read because I wanted to advance my knowledge. When I was 18, I accompanied my brother to sell Thai oxen. Our group had 60 oxen. Once combined with the entire group stock, there was 600 oxen to sell. Northeasterners call someone who sells Thai oxen Nai Hoi. That time, there were around 100 of us traveling together, and I was the youngest. When it came to accommodations, my group always had an advantage. When we traveled into town to acquire food and materials, my peers and elders would designate me the head Nai Hoi. If there was a home where there was an unwed daughter from a family of good standing, my elders would take me there. The elders would exalt my virtues in order to get a better deal on the supplies, like rice, chili, salt, and fermented fish. We always got lower prices, and sometimes were given items for free. But it was also a trip filled with immense suffering. At some places, thieves lurked nearby, awaiting an opportunity to steal our oxen. We had to stand guard all night. After 4 months, we returned home. When I was 19, my father took me to live in Ban Ki Lek, Ban Dung District, Udon Thani Province. Ban Ki Lek had been relocated and renamed Ban Kammaṭṭhāna. When I was 20, my parents had me ordain as a monk again. I spent the rains retreat, Vasa, at Watsanfran Wararam in Chaiwan District. I didn't have any difficulties with my studies because I had previously completed my primary, secondary, and advanced level Buddhist studies. After I had ordained, I came to learn of the Thammayut order of monks. In those times, the Thammayut and Mahanikaya monastic orders were at odds. At that time, Luang Por Thoon from Ban Champa had established a temple in Ban Noi Nong Tum, Chaiwan District. We crossed paths while on alms round, Bintapata, and I recognized him. The next day, I went to visit Wat Pa Santikawat to observe Luang Por Thoon's code of conduct and to see if he was still as orderly as I remembered. In the waste pile was a wooden toothbrush, just like Pra Ācariya Thoon had used back when I was a samanera. At that moment, I felt a strong desire to become a monk of the Thammayut order, but it was impossible to do at that time because the Mahanikaya order was in the process of obliterating the Thammayut order. So I planned to disrobe from the Mahanikaya order and reordain in the Thammayut order at another time. During that time, there was a village chief named Peng who was skilled at using the abacus. He came to the temple and taught the monks and samaneras how to use it. At first, I observed how it was used, and then I practiced with some of the monks and samaneras. The instructor had an adding technique, starting from 1 + 2 + 3, all the way up to 10. After he demonstrated each mathematical functions technique once, I was immediately able to follow suit. The instructor was amazed by my knack for the abacus and my ability to understand all 4 functions so quickly, namely addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Whatever number he set as the basis, I could use the abacus to add, subtract, multiply, and divide it. I became proficient at using the abacus to calculate within a single day. Thereafter, I became the one teaching the monks and samaneras how to use it. I even invented a new addition technique so that we wouldn't have to use the Chinese method anymore. I went out and bought an abacus to use as a basis for a novel design, one unlike any other. The original design is divided into 2 sides, with 2 balls on one side and 5 on the other. I designed and crafted an adaptation with 1 ball on one side and 4 balls on the other. Anyone who saw my invention was perplexed as to how it worked, because they couldn't follow my thinking. Around that time, a clerk from the sugar factory came and saw how proficient I was with numbers and calculations. He was pleased with what he saw and spoke to me about work. He said he was going to quit soon, and he implored me to take over his job as a clerk at the sugar factory at Bad Nong Lak. So I decided to disrobe, thinking that I'd earn some money first and then ordain as a Tamayut monk later on. There were 4 others who were also going to disrobe on the same day. That morning, flowers in hand, we went to see our preceptor, Upachaya, together. He allowed the 4 of them to disrobe, but refused my request because he had high hopes for me. He had seen my abilities and expected for me to become a leader of the monks one day. However, I eventually talked my preceptor into accepting my request. Upon seeing me in commoner's clothes during the lunch offering, the lay people were overcome with tears. They too had hoped I would become a high-ranking ecclesiastical chief officer, Kanatipadi, who would govern the Buddhist monastic order, Sangha, in the future. Thereafter, I went to apply for the clerk position at the sugar factory and was hired. They gave me a starting salary of 1,000 baht per month and increased it to 2,000 baht, then to 3,000 baht. After working there for only 3 months, the sugar factory closed. My parents wanted me to get married and had already found a suitable girl for me. I told them that I had some business to do in Vientiane first. I was there for 3 months. I narrowly escaped becoming a son-in-law in Laos and returned to Ban Dong Wai, Ban Phu district. I had a friend there who had grand plans to grow sugarcane to sell to the factories. The government gave us 25 acres, and we purchased an additional 275 acres for a total of 300 acres. I resolved that if I didn't have 1 million baht in my hands, I wouldn't get married. We hired workers to clear the fields and plant sugarcane. During that period, my thinking changed. A worker asked me, "This is such a large venture to embark on. Do you have a family yet?" "Not yet," I replied. "Why not?" he asked. I said, "I haven't met a girl that I like yet." "What kind of girl do you like?" he asked. I told him, first off, she would have to be someone who doesn't eat raw foods like fermented fish. Secondly, she would have to firmly uphold the 5 precepts, Pancha Sila. If the girl doesn't meet both of these requirements, I will not get married. My friend guaranteed that there was a girl who met those qualifications in a nearby village. I was interested. My friend wanted to obtain lucky lottery numbers in that village, and I wanted to check out the girl in the village. So we went to make merit, punya, during the holy day, Ubosata, at that village's temple.